Hello, my beautiful co-creators. Lilu here at the Conscious Life Expo, and I have a real treat here today on the Juicy Living Tour as I bump into these two delicious human beings after, actually I was interviewing Barbara Max Hubbard and you were there, and what a delight to have bumped into Dr. JJ and Desiree. This is wonderful. And I just want to remind everybody that you have written you wrote the Keys of Enoch in 74?
73.
73.
And so we are coming up on the 40th anniversary of this wonderful teaching that has influenced many of the speakers here at the Expo, but also some of the great thinkers like Barbara Marx Hubbard and others involved with the understanding of where we are in the universe and the whole quest for new meaning in life.
What's great is it's actually a futuristic book, and many of these things that Dr. Hurtak talked about in the 70s are coming to the fore. And so this is what's so exciting in terms of contact with other levels of intelligence and understanding about our solar cycles and changes with the solar flares. All these things actually have been written in the Keys and are coming out now.
So the Keys of Enoch, which I'm holding here, represent a type of cosmic code book from the basics of genetics and the genetic code to the aspects of environmental change, archaeological discovery of ancient civilizations, and contact with the higher worlds which we are a part of. And so this is really a mission of cosmic citizenship, that we're all part of what Buckminster Fuller called Spaceship Earth. And we're beginning to open our eyes to the signs and wonders that we are basically embryo gods or sparks of divinity waking up to realize that we are co-creators, co-evolutionists, and we have a fantastic journey ahead of us that takes us beyond 2012, and we call the downward scenarios that play up limitation rather than compassion and love, which is the guiding force.
Right, so one of the key parts of the Keys of Enoch is that there's always hope, that we're not alone. I know many people, when they look at whether it's 2012 or other aspects, think, well, if the planet comes to an end, there's no one around to help us. And that's not true. We say that there are many levels of intelligence who are watching, who are guiding, who are caring for us on planet Earth. And of course, we have to do our part. That's very important. We're not just to let go and do nothing. But we are co-evolving in a greater universe, and it's with that understanding that we start moving forward and becoming what we consider cosmo beings of light.
Can you tell us, can we just back up a little bit and tell us how this happened back in 73?
Yes, at that time I was a young professor. I was experimenting with ancient language or seed syllables of sound, and by bringing together different sacred expressions, the ancient Hebrew, the ancient Aramaic, the Sanskrit, and putting them together into a musical context, I was able to open up a morphogenic door to the future, and I was given a higher consciousness experience where light simply manifested around my body, and I was taken into a future experience of what I call the higher evolution, higher cosmic intelligence. And now this is very difficult to describe on camera, but several years ago, actually 10 years ago in Tulum, Mexico, I also was making use of sacred seed syllables, and I brought this picture to show what happened late in the afternoon by the pyramids of Tulum. As you can see, a tremendous force of light appears around my body. My translator is taken back, in fact, if you can see clearly behind where I'm standing. It was interesting that a man was taking a picture of his wife at the time and was able to capture this event. I call it superluminal communication. And so what I have seen and what I have experienced,
What you have accessed.
correct, is something that's part of each of our opportunities of realizing that we are multidimensional beings. Consciousness is not localized simply within our body, but extends throughout the universe. We are part of a universal mind. We are also not simply three-dimensional, but we're multidimensional. So we have the opportunities to draw upon a vast realm of knowledge and participate as we overcome, as it were, the metaphors of limitation. So the Keys of Enoch, although somewhat sophisticated in geometric language and mathematical language, actually spell out the God code, where we actually reprogram our own DNA, RNA. We quicken our consciousness. We activate a fantastic sense of love and respect for the human race. And this is what we've been doing at the UN.
Right, and in a sense, the keys show us that our whole code structure of life did not evolve from the ooze of the earth, but we actually have a higher code structure that we feel comes from other dimensional realms. And this is some of the research that's going on now worldwide, that the codes of light, the waveforms of light, and even the information of light really comes from a higher source. In fact, there's someone right now at the University of Edinburgh who's looking at feeding information through light-emitting diodes. That means the light you're seeing, you'll actually be able to get information for your internet, for your computer. And this is what we think maybe is a little aspect of how light came into this planet, that it actually came with this code structure into our bodies, which is why we are a sacred geometry and why we are beings that will continue to evolve.
So this whole cosmic blueprint is very important because it spells out as early as 1973 where we will find life in the local universe, where we will look and find ancient civilizations that have been here before, and what we can do as we bring together all aspects of the human race into a new scientific civilization. If we turn, for example, to key 215 in the Book of Knowledge, there is a world map. I'm just going to hold this. I know it may be difficult for the viewers of this documentary to see it, but there are 12 basic longitudinal lines that run to the surface of the Earth. One goes through an area of Japan called Yonaguni, where the ancients were an interesting civilization that pushed out into the Pacific Basin. And Japanese scientists in the 90s found underwater certain pyramidal constructs, landforms that were very massive. They invited me to go out, and they suddenly realized that I had mathematically received information as to exactly where they would find these underground forms of earlier intelligence. We have found also in Africa areas of gigantic footprints. Also, the Keys of Enoch tell us where we would find this in East Africa. We have found, and French scientists and anthropologists from Indonesia, evidence in the Isle of Flores in Indonesia, the existence of a small race of people that go back 800,000 years ago called the Homo floresiensis, also specifically spelled out in the Keys of Enoch on this remarkable map that goes right through the Isle of Flores. So we have here, shall we say, a roadmap that opens the back door to history as well as the front door of history. Both the past, the present, must be recapitulated into the future as we reclaim our cosmic birthright.
So we're saying several things. One, if there was Neanderthals, there was Homo sapiens, which are us, and there was also Homo floresiensis, a whole nother species group. There were already 3 species of hominids, those are people who can walk on 2 legs, living on planet Earth. Now, we were the ones that survived. But if there were 3 here, how many do you think could exist in the universe? And this is something that's very exciting. And also, when you look at the underwater and underground structures connected with Yonaguni, this ancient temple that is underwater, that divers were able to look at, you realize that previous cycles have also happened on planet Earth. The changes have happened, but people have always survived. And we are really, we believe, guided. So we don't have to have fear. We can actually have a greater hope. The real question is, what do we do next? And we feel each one of us has a mission to help planet Earth, and that's very important.
I have a little question, well, maybe it's a big one, but regarding Corral in Peru, there's been some kind of structures, really open structures, no walls, no more bodies found, no weapon, anything, and no, skeletons, nothing was discovered. And now we're tracing it back, or people like Greg Braden are starting to say, well, these, were, what happened, this changes everything in our history books.
Exactly. We're just down in Monteverde, Chile, with permission of the Chilean government, and Desiree and I were taken to an archaeological zone which shows evidence of social organization, even small toys for children, going back some 30 to 33,000 years ago. So it shows a whole evolutionary development from South America across the Pacific at a very early point of time. In fact, this information is so sensitive, classical anthropologists do not want to talk about it. But yes, from that point to what we've found in Peru and what we found in Brazil suggests that there are many other earlier footprints of civilization that are just beginning to tweak our consciousness. I brought with me also a picture of my work in Egypt beneath the Giza Plateau outside of the great city of Cairo, where in 1997 on an expedition, Desiree and I were privileged to be part of that group using ground-penetrating radar to find the lid of the tomb of Osiris. Zahi Hawass took credit for this 2 years later in a national news release, but he did say on Fox Television there was a group 2 years earlier that began to do the original probe beneath the sands of Egypt. And so we're finding ancient tombs, we're finding ancient corridors of information that we believe hold the treasures of knowledge of why Egypt is so important, like certain island societies in the Pacific and South America.
And what we believe is that very possibly people came from the Pacific Rim, Japan, and areas of Indonesia, and because the water levels, we know at that time, were much lower, the islands perhaps were much bigger, they came across to South America. So South America may have been inhabited first. And what's interesting, in parts of Brazil, we're even finding petroglyphs that show beings with 6 fingers and 6 toes. So it also might have been a race. Now, the Bible talks about 6 fingers and 6 toes connected with the giants. So here's another species that might have lived in South America at the time, perhaps 50,000 years ago, because this is what they're dating some of the Brazilian rock art. They found ash remains, and when they dated it, they found that it could be as old as 50,000 years ago. This is amazing. The changes that we're finding in the New World is really awakening us to the fact that there were people here a lot longer, more civilized.
And I was going to say, with higher intelligence, and I already understood that they could transform, because if there is no bones or anything found, I mean, technically they have transformed themselves in light beings, or what has happened?
Well, this has been the theory also in Egypt, when some of the very early tombs of the early dynasties, there's also no bodies found. And some of the theories have been that the Egyptians understood that you could change your body and go back into the stars. So perhaps at least the early dynasties of Egypt had the knowledge to do this, and that's where the legends come from.
So this gets into an evolutionary biology that goes into transhuman form, that there are those in space that have graduated even beyond the extraterrestrial dimension into what we will call the ultraterrestrial dimension.
Yes.
In a play from a new book I wrote called The 72 Divine Names, or Names of the Most High, there is an illustration here. I call this a cosmogram, a picture of multidimensionality, and you see at the top beings of pure light, or pure energy. These would be the ultra-terrestrial forms, as opposed to those who are the guardian forms of evolution, slightly beyond the human race. And then at the bottom, the human race, basically at this stage of initiation, where we're putting the basic contours of a new science of consciousness and a new direction of what I will call a pluralistic or ecumenical spirituality together, recognizing that we're all interconnected. And so what we have done at the Academy for Future Science is to find the lost pieces of information of the shamanistic traditions, of the African traditions, of the Andean traditions in South America, to show that we have all come from a greater tradition of teaching and cosmology. And the Keys of Enoch represent this new consciousness cosmology of human unity, but also spiritual unity. A human awakening to the fact that we have brothers and sisters in the higher worlds of space, but we also have the privilege now of going into a quantum change, into a new civilization on the high frontier. So this is basically why this documentary and conversation with you is so important, is to feel the juice of life, the inner nectar of life. Not simply the apple that is taken from the tree, but also the other fruit that appears on the greater tree, what the ancient prophets and mystics call the Etz Chaim, the tree of life, where you have multiple choices, multiple dimensions, and possibilities, that we're not isolated as an individual experiment, but we are part of a pluralistic form of intelligence.
And so what Dr. Hurtak is also saying is that we're not just talking about extraterrestrial levels of intelligence. Even if those in the ancient Egypt were able to go into the stars, it didn't have to be in a physical form. It could be in a light energy form. And this we call the ultra-terrestrial levels of intelligence. So just as there are many species we believe in the universe, perhaps as many as 70, there also are other levels and dimensions of intelligence also in the universe. And of course, the ancients have called these the angels or the master teachers or the lords of light. But we believe that there are many, many levels of these higher realities, these higher entities that exist in the universe around us.
So consciousness is the directing force. Matter and mind simply do not come out of a simplified evolutionary material realm, but mind and matter come out of the consciousness realm that links us with a much greater evolutionary possibility of creation. And we see it in all of its various forms appearing now on our doorstep. The question is, we must need a new ontology of science. We must need a new definition of what is scientific truth, what is spiritual reality, and how we all exemplify this in the sense of unconditional love that we have for one another. And thus, as we open the book of life, we realize that we are co-creators in the next chapter of the book of life. We have a positive future if we decide to go with the positive spiral into the greater cosmos, rather than hold on to the material aspects of the old paradigms that are basically being removed or falling into the lower spiral of negativity. So this really requires each of us to make a greater sacrifice of life and to be activists of light and joyous experience.
So what are we currently facing a choice? And if there is a choice, what is that choice?
Well,
and how important is that choice?
We need to make a choice and recognize through the government disclosures, that is to say, the recognition through thousands and thousands of pages of documentation from the government of the United Kingdom, from New Zealand, from Canada, from Brazil, that all of this is pointing to a vastly intelligent universe that we're a part of. We need to change our law and incorporate, as I have shown in my lectures at the United Nations and throughout the world, as we see here in this Brazilian document, a space law that makes sense, that we do not militarize space, that space is a common property for all countries, whether they are spacefaring or not. And on the basis of a movement into space, we recognize that we have an exo-industrial ability to build hospitals in space, schools in space, a whole new frontier of exosociology, where we begin to work with our partners. And this collective partnership is requiring a whole new redesign of science that will be spiritual and human-orientated rather than object-orientated. In other words, constructive science and a constructive psychology and sociology is required to make this change. Facts by themselves are not sufficient.
Right, so even though we're talking about us here and other beings there, there's another aspect that I believe is also part of the choice, and that is the consciousness field. And I believe that there is a greater field, and that the choice is to change from negative thinking, which many of us do every single moment of our lives, and the fact of the separation that I'm here and you're over there, to a much more collective understanding. And if all of us are part of a great consciousness energy, and we came here even because of this consciousness field that coded the information within us, we know from the research that we've done with remote viewing and our work with Russell Targ and others, that we are all interconnected in our thoughts. So the choice is to put positive energy into the system. And when we can do that, instead of negative thought, we can start changing the planet to a much more positive holism. And we also, what's very important, can reach into those higher dimensions, those other levels of intelligence, and bring that information down here and do things like create free energy technologies and other things that could be beneficial for planet Earth.
Russell Targ was one of the great scientists from Stanford Research Institute in the 1970s that made remote viewing of distant objects a scientific discipline. And through his work, thousands of engineers, in fact, there's over 800,000 references on the internet to the aspect of remote viewing, where we can put our mind at a distant object, retrieve information. In fact, some believe that remote viewing was one aspect that brought to a conclusion some aspects of the Cold War, when people could go into distant file cabinets, retrieve information, bring it back, or military targets, analyze, showing there's no such thing as secret information. Everything is knowledgeable and experiential on some levels of vibration.
To all forms of life in the entire universe, good and bad?
To the human form of life, and certainly to all forms of life, we have this great decision-making, this selective factor to use knowledge constructively or destructively, that is to say, in non-benign contexts. And so this is the larger realization that there are some spacefaring civilizations that may not share, as it were, the privileges of what is declared in the French Revolution of equality, liberty, and fraternity. But at the same time, this revolution of spirit must also bring out the sense of unconditional love, unconditional wisdom, unconditional joy. And this is, again, what you have so beautifully expressed in the title for this documentary, the inner juice, the inner nectar of life that we share. It's not just words. It's just not talking faces. It is the ability to recognize that there's a whole dynamic awakening taking place of humanity, of Homo universalis, universal humanity, tasting for the first time the movement of peoples towards higher tools of education, higher experiences of quantum change, higher experiences of contact with the greater universe. And I want to share also at this time a document from the government of Brazil that I brought back to NASA for analysis. It shows a document of unusual geometric forms flying over the city of São José dos Campos in southern Brazil in 1986. Massive wheels, each being the size of approximately 3 football fields. And the series of vehicles passed over a nuclear site that was secretly being built by the Brazilian government. I am also pictured with one of the Brazilian scientists acquiring these documents, which NASA did analyze, and draw the conclusion that this was far beyond the capability of the human race to create these gigantic wheel-like structures in space. The consequence of this was an uproar in the Brazilian community that they found the government was secretly building this nuclear system, which then fortunately was curtailed. The appearance of low-flying elusive objects over military sites throughout the world, neutralizing nuclear weapons, also has been assigned since the 1950s, 60s, and 70s that we are being prepared in some way to put away our weapons of destruction and overcome our quests or for a technical drift towards self-destruction. We are being told that it's time really to see the tools of peacemaking and that we must be peacemakers in the grand design of creation.
See, I think this is such a great thing because there are sightings of extraterrestrial spacecraft flying over nuclear installations and in some cases neutralizing the weapons there when it's almost impossible to do that. It had to be some sort of electromagnetic or some unusual frequency to neutralize these weapons. But it means that they are watching us, that they're concerned about what we're doing, and that, in a sense, they're not leaving us to just do what we want to. They're actually giving us signals and warnings and saying, hey, wake up. You know, you can wake up into a vast cosmic brotherhood and sisterhood of life in space if you put away your weapons of war. And I hope we can listen to this, and I think many young people are doing this. In fact, of course, today, even on the news, and I know that this documentary will go on for many years, I hope, but there are protesters going on all throughout the Middle East, and it's a fantastic thing that people are wanting a change, that people are wanting more freedom, more democracy, a greater understanding, a greater sharing. I mean, this is really a new awakening, and I hope that this really represents who we are on planet Earth.
And the nuclear episodes, that is to say the scenarios, are part of the disclosure documents that are being shared. I was privileged to be part of the first disclosure conference in 1995 in Washington, D.C. with Harvard psychologist John Mack, and we spoke to the world of the physical, tangible evidence. And the following year, we were in Mexico at a location of a small industrial city, Regina, where 3 young girls had seen the aspects of an extraterrestrial being. This was, so we say, captured in Listoe, one of the great Brazilian publications, as a witness of actual contact, which I then showed later that year at the United Nations in a film documentary. So to put this together, we are recognizing that higher intelligence is knocking on our door. They're telling us to put away our playthings of death, to listen to the surge of young people looking for new meaning in life, and to recognize that there is a cosmic blueprint of interdependence that we have with each other and our cosmic cousins from the higher creation.
Earlier on we talked about the universal intelligence that exists. Is there some kind of levels or organization that needs to take place or that is realigning itself that you know of to support what's going on right now?
Well, we feel locally some of the information, some of even the acts of war are not just always our thoughts. If you really consider ourselves as really senders and receivers, we call it biotransducers of information, some of the negativity we may feel from time to time might be from not only the planet itself or our people around us, but maybe even from the local galactic system. And we believe that some of this is also changing, that even the local system is changing, and the forces that are much more positive, that are here to really help us evolve, are implanting into us in a positive way, and we always have free will to choose or not to choose. That's the key. What thoughts we choose is the key to how we move forward. Every thought, in fact, this is what quantum mechanics tells us, that there's multiplicity of thoughts always available to you. And you as a receiver then choose which thought you want. And many people want to choose the negativity, or they want to choose the fat dessert. They don't want to choose the healthy salad. And these are our choices, and we have to be very conscious of these choices. And when we do, we're bringing in this light consciousness. Of course, going beyond the food, we're going into the spiritual food. And so this helps us to bring those other levels of intelligence closer and closer to planet Earth, closer to working with us on a personal level.
So we participate in the universe through higher states of consciousness. And the universe is not simply a random act of singularities. The human mind is not simply sodium ions of information flowing, but no, we are an active vehicle of being able to tap into what we would call a higher evolutionary mind that operates on multiple levels. This is why on the cover of my book, we have 7 radiations of light showing 7 levels of meaning, from the biophysical, the subatomic, all the way to the cosmic. At the top, the dove, the descent of the dove, is assigned universally as the dove of peace. As we are peacemakers, we open up the book of knowledge, and there is the sacred spiral, but also at the top, there is the sacred triad, the subject of the tetrahedral nature of the building blocks of creation, through which we open up a vortex of knowledge and information that flows through. And so as we gather momentum, as we see the information revolution, as we see the geopolitical changes, we recognize that there's a great opportunity knocking on our door to take seriously the opportunity that we can change the course of evolution. We can reprogram ourselves, even if we are the 2% that choose to be positive at all times, to be part of this upward spiral rather than this destructive spiral that always seems to come in behind political and economic change. And this is the importance, that we are part of a higher blueprint of a man-God, a woman-God partnership. Divinity is within us, but also beyond us. The creation is a microcosmic creation within us, but as a macrocosmic creation beyond us, we are also participants already in the future.
I love the silence. It makes all the sense then. It all sinks in. Silence is important, isn't it?
The Greek word is psyche, or silence, and out of psyche, according to the Greek philosophers, the basic building blocks of the tree of life were forged. And so our message really to our world audience is to have upon our heartbeat the happy face of life, have on our head the Greek words in all languages, ad astra, to the stars, and recognize that we are the children of the universe. We are growing up. We're taking our place in creation.
You're like a spokesperson of the universe.
In many ways,
There's a director, there's a kind of orchestrator, there's something about you that is that I feel it's hard to put in words, but how would you, cosmically speaking, there's something, rather than a teacher.
We're very privileged to have the sacred mantras or sacred words of our book utilized in November 2010 by the Berlin Symphony Orchestra, where they were able to put together these words of forgiveness and compassion for the first time, celebrating not only the coming down of the Berlin Wall, but also the tragic events of World War II, and recognizing that we must build, as it were, a whole new direction in Europe. We must recognize in forgiveness the dynamic sparks of vibration. And out of the ancient mantras and seed syllables that we have translated from many of the languages of the world comes a new language of experience, a language that we have shared with Gilberto Gil from Brazil, Ellis Coltrane from North America, Carlos Santana, representing the whole new wave of what I call super soul, the ability of the soul to sing and to dance. And yes, it is a part of a new language, a cosmic language, a grammar or a syntax that is forged not only with words, but also silence between the words. Yeah. Not only music, but also the harmonic that is between the musical notes. I call it syntony, the ability to hear the symphonic roar of the universe in every cell of your body.
So we think in addition to meditation and choosing the right thoughts, that sound vibrations and even song and singing, the positive lyrics, things of forgiveness, things of love, actually help humanity. And we also introduce some of the ancient sacred expressions, because if all life is vibration, using these tones, using these sounds actually help to put us closer in resonance with the greater galactic mind, the greater universal mind.
So we have this wonderful library of music of some of the great composers of our generation, some of the great artists available through our academy. And so if people go to our website, thekeysofenoch.org, or in all different languages, clavisdeenoch.org, in the French, in the Russian, in the German, they will be able to acquire, as it were, the music that goes with the book, the music and the film that goes with the blueprint that's being unfolded in our lifetime.
And that's what I would like to end up with, just again, a small little question, but the relationship between music and the universe, because we hear that quite often, the octaves and the music. And could you summarize for us?
The ancients, particularly the Greeks, thought of the music of the spheres, that each planetary system had its own unique music. This was elaborated on by the great composers in other cultures. In fact, the Chinese have tangible evidences of artifacts going back 7,000 years of very elaborate flute systems. But there are basic harmonics in the universe that we are hearing even from the Chandra X-ray Observatory in London at something on the order of 50 octaves below middle C, sounds coming from the universe. And we realize that all life is vibrations. As we build upon these vibrations with our new vibrations, then we become the trumpets and the musical instruments of raising consciousness, not only through science, but also through the arts and spirituality, all converge then within the template and the opportunity of a consciousness design, which is not static but active.
And so you have the symphony of the heavens, the music of the spheres, you have the symphony that's going on within your body, and you have an attunement that we can have in music and sound between our physical body, the universe around us, and then also being able to activate certain aspects within our mind to reach beyond the normal ways of thinking, to reach into new spaces and new realms that are in tune with those angelic beings. And they themselves, think about it, the angels always had musical harps or musical instruments. I mean, this is not real in our reality, but it's the idea that there was a sound, a vibration that could be in harmony with us should we choose to sing a new song.
And if you go into the ancient tombs in China, Dunhua and other places, you will find in the upper parts of the chambers more often beings that have musical instruments. Angel simply means a messenger from another world or dimension. So it was, in my opinion, a symbol of not the extraterrestrial, but more the ultraterrestrial realm of intelligence that had graduated into the symphony of life. And we must realize the visible as well as the non-visible, the practical as well as the ideal in this transhuman phase of evolution that we're going through, because it will be a quantum shift in the twinkling of an eye.
Yeah.
It will be the Circus Soleil a millionfold, going into vibratory changes that will be magnificent.
And we certainly have a lot of support from the entire universe, and everybody's really, really excited. This is a big transformation that the planet is going through, and everybody's observing, aren't they? And supporting.
Well, this is what I call the graduation from the schoolhouse of Mother Earth into the cosmic university. We're beginning to see the fact that we have a real opportunity now to reach out, to use the illustration of Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel with the hand of man reaching into the hand of the divine, to actually feel the fingerprints of the Elohim, the divine forces that unite us through song, through celebration, and through love.
But I think what's important is that we all really do have to play our part. We all have to play or sing our own song and our music that becomes in harmony with each one of us, or everyone around us. So we have to take a role. We can't just sit back and say, someone else is going to do it for us, or I'm my own person. We have to start seeing the unity. We have to start singing together. We have to start meditating together, and we have to start sharing together. That's very important.
And who's orchestrating?
All of us together. The signs and the seasons are that there is this greater awareness that we're not alone, and our friends are gently bringing through this long period of orientation into an opportunity where everything from the biophysical to the medical to the mathematical to the areas of higher psychology and cosmology, all will take this greatly forward. This is what is illustrated in the Keys of Enoch. So we encourage you throughout the world to realize this book is in over 18 languages, to use it with the music and the symphony and the glories of the divine that greet you, greet all of us. In peace, we say, may peace prevail on earth. Together 3 times in English. May peace prevail on earth. 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 May the 4 quadrants of the heavens, as the ancients define them, the 4 celestial gates, rain light upon us, and may be prepared really for this great dance that we are entering now as cosmic citizens.
This juicy life. Thank you so much. That was such a beautiful moment spent together, and for everybody to hear. This is really, really important information right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you want to see more interviews, you can always go to www.juicylivingtour.com. Much love, my beautiful co-creators.